Let me show you something worth noticing. You're earning more than you did 5 years ago, but you still feel trapped. I've spent decades watching people solve the wrong problem. They chase raises, side hustles, bigger numbers in their accounts, and still feel like they're running out of time. The money arrives, but the freedom doesn't, and they can't figure out why. I learned this slowly, not from books, from watching. The pattern repeats itself with eerie consistency. People who finally get the income they wanted discover they built a different kind of prison. They're busier, more committed, more locked in. They have money, but no margin, no space to think, no ability to stop. That's when I realized we've been taught to pursue the wrong thing entirely. Most people believe freedom is a number. Hit 6 figures, pay off the debt, reach financial independence. Then they think life opens up. But I've watched enough people cross those thresholds to know what actually happens. They arrive at the goal exhausted. They've optimized their income but destroyed their attention. They've filled their calendar so completely that even wealth can't buy them a quiet afternoon. They own their time on paper, but in practice, they're more fragmented than ever. Here's what nobody tells you. Money is a tool for buying time, but most people use it to buy more complexity instead. They upgrade the house, which means more maintenance. They expand the business, which means more decisions. They increase their lifestyle, which means more management. Every dollar earned gets converted into a new obligation that demands hours they don't have. I've seen this version of success up close. It looks impressive from the outside. It feels suffocating from the inside. The ones who actually feel free, truly free, did something different. They didn't just build wealth, they built something harder. Control over their attention. They learned to say no to opportunities that paid well but cost time they couldn't afford. They built income that didn't require their constant presence. They kept their lives simple enough that their money could actually create space, not just fill it. This sounds obvious when you hear it, but watch how people actually behave. They take the higher salary that adds 10 hours to their week. They start the side project that fragments their evenings. They say yes to commitments that sound valuable but quietly devour their margin. They confuse activity with progress, busyness with building. And then they wonder why they still feel behind. I used to think the problem was discipline. Now I think it's something deeper. Most people never stop to define what they actually wanted time for. So they fill it with whatever shows up. Meetings, messages, plans that sound important but lead nowhere. Freedom isn't abstract. It has a shape. It's 3 uninterrupted hours to think in the morning. It's the ability to turn down something lucrative because it doesn't fit. It's knowing your attention belongs to you, not to whoever asks loudest. But here's the tension that makes this hard. Building that kind of freedom requires an enormous amount of focus up front. You can't buy your way into it with a decent salary. You have to construct it piece by piece through decisions that feel limiting at first. The people I've watched do this well made choices that confused their peers. They stayed in smaller homes. They avoided promotions that came with golden handcuffs. They built systems that eventually ran without them. Even though it took years of invisibility to set up, they were willing to look like they were doing less because they were playing a longer game. This is where most people break. They can't tolerate the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So they fill it with noise, more plans, more optimization, more content about productivity that just adds another layer of obligation. The irony is brutal. The quest for freedom becomes another thing stealing your time. I've noticed something about the people who actually escape this trap. They stopped measuring progress by how much they were doing. They started measuring by how much they could stop doing without consequences. Could they take a week off without everything collapsing? Could they ignore their phone for a day? Could they say no to an opportunity without feeling like they were falling behind? That's the real scoreboard. Not income, not net worth, not even passive income, which most people chase without realizing it still requires more attention than they think. True freedom is when your time is yours by default, not by exception. And here's what makes this uncomfortable. Most people aren't willing to pay the price for that. Not because it's expensive in money terms, because it requires years of building in silence while everyone around you is sprinting toward visible progress. It requires you to ignore the noise long enough to construct something that eventually goes quiet. I think this is why so few people achieve it, even when they have the resources. It's not a knowledge problem, it's a patience problem. It's a willingness to be misunderstood for years while you build leverage that doesn't show up on Instagram. The ones who made it through that phase all share something in common. They had clarity about what they wanted their days to feel like, not what they wanted to own, not what they wanted to achieve, what they wanted their attention to be doing. That clarity let them say no to almost everything else. Because here's the truth that took me too long to learn. Every yes is 1,000 small no's to things you'll never even notice. You agree to one thing, and suddenly a dozen hours disappear into logistics, coordination, follow-up. Your calendar becomes a museum of past decisions you can't escape. Freedom isn't built by addition. It's built by subtraction that feels radical at first. And the hard part, the part that makes this feel impossible, is that you can't subtract your way into it quickly. You have to build the base first, the systems, the assets, the skills, the relationships. That takes time, and during that time, you'll feel busier than ever. But there's a difference between building toward freedom and building toward complexity. One gets simpler as it scales, the other just gets heavier. I've watched people spend decades climbing the ladder, convinced they're on the right path because everyone around them is climbing too. Then one day, they look up and realize they've built something impressive that they can't leave. That's not freedom. That's a monument to distraction. The shift happens when you stop asking, how can I make more? And start asking, how can I build something that eventually requires less of me? That question changes everything. It reorients your decisions. It makes you ruthless about what you start and careful about what you protect. Most people never ask it. They're too busy chasing the next thing to notice they're running in place. I'm not saying money doesn't matter. It does. But it's a means, not the destination. And if you don't know what you're buying with it, if you haven't defined what your time is actually for, then it just becomes another scoreboard in a game that never ends. The people who figured this out stopped playing that game. They stopped comparing. They stopped optimizing for appearances. They built something quiet that gave them what they actually wanted. Mornings that belonged to them, afternoons without urgency, The ability to think without interruption, that's wealth, not the number in the account, the space in the calendar. And if you look closely at your own life right now, you'll probably notice the gap between the money you're earning and the time you actually control, between what you thought success would feel like and what it actually feels like. That gap is the problem, and money alone won't close it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next.